When I pulled into the gravel drive, the house didn't greet me, it just sat there. Still. Hollow. Not even the wind had the decency to stir the porch swing. It was the first time I'd returned alone since Mama passed. The kind of alone that doesn't ask permission to settle in your chest. I didn't bother turning on the porch light. Just used my key, same one I'd had since college, and stepped into the silence. You'd think a house could hold onto warmth, like fabric clings to skin on a humid Texas day. But not this one. Not anymore. Since Zelma Corinne Remy's funeral, it felt like even the walls had stopped listening. I was the one who handled the estate. The one who signed the papers, spoke to the lawyer, paid for the obituary. Meanwhile, the rest of them acted like they were at a family reunion. Smiling. Toasting. Laughing about Mama's banana pudding like she just stepped out to pick up sugar. I walked straight to her bedroom. The hallway creaked like it remembered me. The door stuck like it always did. And there it was, where it had always been, Mama's vanity, white lacquer chipped at the edges, the mirror rimmed with aged spots like the one she used to dab cream on every night. The jewelry chest sat atop the table, regal in its own right. Oak with brass inlays, passed down from her mother's mother. The one thing she'd told me never to forget. Don't just protect the jewels, she'd whispered the night before her heart gave out, protect what they meant. I ran my fingers over the lid. Cold. When I opened it, a faint scent of rosewater and lavender hit me. Beneath the lid, tucked into the corner, lay that old gray silk handkerchief, edges worn, almost unraveling. Mama used to keep it with her rosary. Strange. I hadn't seen it in years. Something felt wrong. The chest seemed lighter than it should have. I closed it gently. Told myself I was just tired. But in the pit of my gut, a question had already begun to form, and it wouldn't go away. Later that evening, I sank into the recliner with a bottle of water and my phone. I hadn't checked it since lunch. A ping caught my attention. A social media alert, Lorinda's profile. Photos. Dozens of them. Smiling women in floral dresses holding glasses of rose. Balloons. A banner that read celebrating Zelma, a life well lived. And there, in the center of it all, was my brother, Everett, grinning like he'd just signed a business deal. Lorinda beside him, arm hooked through his, like she'd always belonged there. My name wasn't in a single caption. I clicked through the comments. Compliments. Condolences. And then, one voice message, left accidentally on our family thread. I recognized Lorinda's tone, syrupy and sharp. Don't bother inviting Cortland. He's just the sentimental type. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Grief is one thing. But being erased from your own mother's legacy, that's a different kind of death. I sat there, screen glowing in my palm, heat rising behind my eyes. I wasn't invited. Not to the toast, the speeches, the stories. I was out. Out of the picture. Just like that. I stood, walked back to the bedroom. Turned on the lamp. The jewelry chest sat there, same as before, but now, it looked different. Hollow. I opened it again. This time, I didn't hesitate. The top compartment, empty. The second drawer, nothing. Necklace slots? Barren. Earring cushions? Gone. Every velvet-lined space, stripped bare. I yanked open the bottom tray. Empty. A gasp escaped before I could catch it. I dropped to my knees, searching beneath the vanity, behind the mirror. I grabbed the inventory list I'd made before the funeral, unfolded it with shaking hands. Cross-referenced. Every item. The sapphire pin from her debutante ball. The gold locket with Daddy's photo. The charm bracelet from her college years. All gone. My hands clenched the papers so hard it tore. They didn't just steal from her, I whispered, barely able to speak through the fury. They stole from who she believed I was. I sat back, chest heaving. The empty chest stared back at me like a coffin. Cold. Silent. Mocking. Was it Lorinda? Everett? Did they pawn it? Gift it? Parade it at their party while sipping cheap wine in Mama's name? The room spun. I reached for the chair, slumped into it. My hand gripped the edge of the jewelry box like it might anchor me. Then, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message preview, you don't know what they did before the party. I didn't breathe. Staring at the screen, my jaw tightened. I read it again. You don't know what they did before the party. Someone knew. And they weren't guessing. The text stayed on my screen like it was daring me to ignore it. You don't know what they did before the party. 7 words that didn't explain a damn thing, and yet, they said everything. I stared at it longer than I cared to admit. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Who sent it? Why now? I heard my mother's voice in the back of my head. Not every truth is a gift, Cortland. She used to say that when I asked too many questions about Dad, or about the family money, or why Everett always seemed to get second chances. But this wasn't about old stories. This was happening now, and the silence in this house was starting to feel like a cover-up. I typed, "Who is this?" No answer. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo. My stomach dropped. The picture showed a woman's hand, raised in a toast, her wrist draped in the very gold bracelet Mama had worn every Easter since I was a boy. The lighting matched those from Lorinda's party. Her party. The one I wasn't invited to. I zoomed in. No mistaking it, the small cross charm Mama added the year after her cancer scare was there, dangling like it didn't know it had been stolen. My head pulsed. That wasn't grief. That was rage. They flaunted it. Publicly. Like it was theirs to give, theirs to wear, theirs to parade around while pretending to honor her. I stood up, breathing sharp, walking in circles like that would settle the boil building in my chest. I wasn't going to let it sit. I was done being quiet. By morning, I was driving into town. The sun was low, and the air had that slow southern stickiness that made everything feel like it took twice the effort. I pulled into Brew and Bites, the cafe where folks gossiped more than they ate. I didn't want eggs. I wanted eyes and ears. A few heads turned when I walked in, not because I was some big deal, but because I hadn't been seen around since the funeral. Small town memory works like that. If you disappear for a week, folks assume it's scandal. I grabbed a corner table, opened my laptop, and started scrolling through Lorinda's public profile. There it was. Clear as daylight. Her wearing Mama's necklace, paired with that self-satisfied caption, keeping Zelma's spirit alive. The comments made me want to spit. She always had such grace, just like you, Lorinda. You deserve it after all you've done for the family. They didn't know. They didn't see what was missing. They didn't know she'd taken it from a box meant to stay shut until the wool was finalized. I downloaded the photo from the text message and dug into the metadata. Old habits from my military logistics days came back like muscle memory. Coordinates. Timestamp. Location tag buried in the code. Seguin. Downtown. A pin dropped on a small jewelry showroom I hadn't thought about in years, Mays and Company. Owned by Tiernan Mays. The man who appraised Mama's collection 2 months before she passed. If anyone had seen the collection recently, it was him. I closed the laptop, paid cash, and drove straight there. The store hadn't changed. Still had the dusty awning, the old open sign with a sun-faded chain, and the same smell of metal polish and regret when you walked in. Tiernan looked up from behind the counter, and I swear, the moment his eyes met mine, something inside him twitched. "Cortland," he said, polite but tight. "Didn't expect to see you." "I didn't expect to have to come," I replied, glancing around. "Thought maybe you could help me out." He nodded slowly. "Looking for a piece?" "No," I said. "Looking for an answer." I slid my phone across the counter, the photo open. This picture, I said. Someone sent it to me last night. Recognize that bracelet? He swallowed. Hard. That's Zelma's. Was. Tiernan looked at the door, then back at me. Lorinda brought it in yesterday morning. Said she had written permission to sell a few things. Written permission? From a dead woman? He didn't answer that. She said it was what your mother wanted. That she didn't want everything just locked away. And you didn't think to call me? I didn't want to get in the middle of family business. I nodded slowly. Not because I accepted it, but because I'd expected it. People like Tiernan fold when faced with a strong enough wind. Lorinda's charm, or threats, or tears, whichever she used, worked. I'll be in touch, I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket. I didn't slam the door on my way out. I didn't have to. By afternoon, I was standing in Lorinda's front yard. She was trimming her rose bushes, wearing yoga pants and a forced innocence. I walked right up to her, holding a printed copy of the photo. You didn't just sell things, Lorinda. You sold the proof that she loved me. She didn't blink. Don't dramatize it, Cortland. She'd have wanted those pieces seen, not stored in a box. There it was. The smugness. The self-righteous tone of someone who thought they knew best, or at least convinced themselves they did. I wasn't sure if she believed it, or just enjoyed the control. If you think silence means consent, I said, stepping closer, think again. She turned back to her garden like I was the problem. But something in her eyes shifted. She knew she'd been caught. And I wasn't backing down. That night, the house was still. The air felt different, not just empty, but expectant. I sat in Mama's old armchair, staring out the window, phone in hand. It buzzed. Same number. You're only seeing half the story. Check the ledger in her study. I looked down the hallway. The study door hadn't been opened since the morning after the funeral. I'd walked past it a dozen times without touching the knob. But now I was beginning to think grief wasn't the only thing she'd left locked away in there. I found Mama's old keyring hidden in the top drawer, keys jumbled, worn. One of them fit the study door. The weight of it in my palm felt heavier than it should. Like holding guilt you don't entirely understand yet. I pushed open the study, hesitated, then stepped inside. The room was frozen in time. Lace curtains filtered soft light. Books untouched. Mama's favorite scent, lavender and old paper, hung in the air. My footsteps echoed. I felt more at home here than in the kitchen where her photos had vanished. On her desk sat a leather-bound ledger, stamped personal notes. A faded post-it within, if anyone reads this, I hope it means the truth matters again. My throat tightened. I settled into the chair across from it, fingers brushing the cover. The name Zelma wasn't just a signature. It was the claim on her life. I opened the pages and read. The entries began 6 months before her death, names, dates, descriptions. Mama felt watched. Perturbed by Lorinda's constant redecorating requests. Notes of disagreements over how jewelry was cataloged. She'd questioned whether certain pieces should simply remain boxed, untouched. Mama's voice emerged in script, he sees what glitters first. Then came the lines that lodged like knives. She assumed I'd grown silent. She wondered if I still believed in her. Maybe I've raised someone too kind for this world, one entry read. I swallowed the lump in my throat. 2 weeks before her fall, Mama wrote, if anything happens, it won't be an accident. My hand shook. I remembered Lorinda brushing off the fall earlier, she's old. Slips happen. Mama never slipped off a step. That phrase, it gnawed at me. Maybe I had ignored signs I should have seen. I dug further, lifting the ledger's drawer. There, a taped envelope. Receipts. Check stubs. All dated while Mama was hospitalized, signed Zelma Corinne. Entry after entry listed consulting, event planning, and wellness therapy, all payments to accounts tied to Lorinda's ventures. The magnitude hit me. Lorinda had manipulated Mama's final months from behind the scenes. The help she offered? It was cover. The public faces she showed? Disguise. I closed my eyes. If betrayal carried a scent, I could smell it now. I cradled the ledger against my chest. Mama trusted me. She believed I would search. She must have known someone would test her silence. At dusk I tucked the ledger and receipts into a sealed envelope. My breath caught when my phone buzzed again. "You're close." But someone else helped her. I froze. I whispered in the quiet room, "Then I'm not done yet." I stepped back into the study before noon, sunlight creeping through the lace curtains like a soft warning. Same hush in the air. Dust floated in lazy circles, undisturbed. The floor creaked under me as if the room knew what I was about to find. I carried the same key, but now it turned with a different weight, like truth pressing back. Mama always locked this room before sunset. I used to tease her for it. She'd smile but never explain. It wasn't about keeping us out, it was about keeping something safe. I reached into my pocket and hit record on my phone. Just in case. If something happens, I murmured, someone should hear the truth. I went through the desk again, slower this time. Under a stack of yellowing receipts, tucked behind a family Bible, was a black flash drive taped to an envelope. I plugged it into Mama's old laptop, which still booted with her Hummingbird background. The file was simple, just labeled cabinet. I clicked. A video started, grainy security footage, timestamp 2:13 a.m., 2 weeks before Mama's fall. There she was, Lorinda. Her face half shadowed. She moved quickly, almost practiced. She opened Mama's locked display cabinet, pulled out the velvet-lined jewelry box, and placed a nearly identical one in its place. I paused the video. The detail hit me hard, same monogram, same stitching. But the weight in my gut told me this wasn't a mistake. She didn't just take it. She came prepared to erase the theft. Cold-blooded. Premeditated. I replayed it, frame by frame, freezing on her hand holding the real box, Mama's rings sparkling under the lamplight like they were winking at me from the past. My jaw clenched so tight I thought I'd crack a tooth. She didn't just steal, I whispered. She rehearsed. I slid open the middle drawer. More envelopes. I flipped to the back of the ledger, this time looking for patterns. Mama hadn't just written pain, she'd traced transactions. There they were, monthly transfers to Lorinda's account, masked under labels like estate logistics, charity consulting. Cross-checked against the papers from the drawer, it lined up. Right down to the day after Mama's hospitalization, when Lorinda paid herself $5,000 for the legacy design. It wasn't just greedy. It was surgical. She dressed up theft as tribute, and no one blinked. Folks called her generous. She's keeping Zelma's memory alive, they said. No one saw the pickpocket behind the prayer hands. I stared at Mama's handwriting. If I'm not strong enough to fight this, I hope someone else will be. I would. I called Cleo. She answered on the second ring, voice tight but steady. I've got something, I said. I heard, she replied. Things around town travel fast when they're dirty. I told her about the video. The transfers. The fake box. She didn't sound surprised, just tired. Come by tomorrow, she said. I've kept some files too. Lorinda's story never did sit right. After we hung up, I typed a message to Lorinda. I have proof. Let's talk, no gardens, no tea parties. I hit send. No response yet. Then I heard a low buzz, the steady lights flickered. Once. Then again. Power outage? No. The hallway stayed lit. But this room, just this room, went dark. Behind me, the door clicked shut. I turned fast, heart in my throat. No one was there. Or maybe someone didn't want me to leave. The sun was dropping behind the pecan trees when I set the table out back. 2 glasses of lemonade, condensation running down the sides. The garden looked peaceful, too peaceful, like it was holding its breath. I'd chosen this place on purpose. I wanted daylight to fade on its own, not because anger snuffed it out. Lorinda showed up on time, wearing that pale pink cardigan she always used when she wanted to look harmless. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I motioned toward the chair opposite mine and set the sealed envelope between us. This isn't about revenge, I told her. It's about truth. She tilted her head. Cortland, everything's about truth with you lately. You sure you're not chasing ghosts? I didn't bite. I'd rehearsed this in my head all morning, not the words, but the calm. Before anyone else sees this, I want you to hear it from me. Her expression barely flickered. I went through the timeline, the transfers, the photos, the footage from the study. She didn't interrupt once, just leaned back and tapped her nails against the glass. When I finished, she gave a soft laugh that stung worse than shouting. You're looking for someone to blame, she said, voice dripping with practiced pity. Your mother didn't trust you with her affairs. That wasn't me. That was her choice. I met her gaze. Caring doesn't look like cashing in someone's trust. Her eyes hardened. You wouldn't understand what she wanted. You were gone, busy playing the dutiful son from a distance. I was here. I handled the mess she left behind. I leaned forward slightly. Handling and helping aren't the same thing, Lorinda. One fixes what's broken. The other breaks it for profit. The cicadas went quiet. Even the breeze seemed to stop. She didn't answer, just stared through me, like she was daring me to say something that would make her the victim. Then, out of nowhere, a familiar voice cut through the air. Cortland? I turned. Quinn was walking up the stone path, casual, uninvited, holding his phone like it was a weapon. My stomach dropped. Lorinda didn't flinch. Oh good, you made it, she said to him. I thought it might help if someone else was here. To keep things balanced. I realized then she'd called him beforehand. She was staging this. Quinn's eyes darted between us. I heard you've been digging through old things, he said carefully. Aunt Zelma did sign some property over, court. You might be remembering wrong. I stared at him, the weight of betrayal heavier than the proof in my hands. You think grief makes me blind? I have her handwriting, her ledgers, her warnings. Then maybe you're reading them wrong, he said, tone soft but patronizing, the kind of tone people use when they've already chosen sides. Lorinda folded her arms, playing the martyr. You can't keep fighting the past, Cortland. Your mother wanted peace. I felt something inside me harden. Not rage, resolve. I stood, taking the envelope from the table. Peace doesn't come from lies dressed up as love. She smirked faintly, as if she'd won by making me leave first. Maybe she thought walking away meant surrender. But I'd learned something that day, silence is only weakness when it's empty. As I reached the gate, I turned back once. What happens next, I said quietly, I won't handle here. But it will happen. Neither of them replied. The air felt heavier, like the garden itself wanted me gone. By the time I reached the porch, the sky was turning orange. I sat for a long while, listening to the insects start up again. They sang like nothing had happened, like truth and deceit could share the same sunset. When night came, I found an envelope under my front door. No return name. No sound of footsteps leaving. Inside was a torn photograph, Mama standing beside a man I'd never seen. On the back, a note in clean, block letters. Ask her about the other will. I stared at it for what felt like hours. There was more. And I had no idea how much more. The phone buzzed before sunrise. Same unlisted number. I stared at the screen for a moment, half expecting it to be another jab in the dark. Instead, the message was simple, ask Martin Keyes. He kept her secret. Martin Keyes. My mother's attorney. A name I hadn't said out loud since the funeral. I called him immediately, voice steadier than I felt. When he answered, it was cautious, that careful tone lawyers use when they sense landmines under every word. "Martin," I said quietly, "this is Cortland Ramey. I think we need to talk about my mother." There was a pause, long enough to hear him exhale through his nose. "Cortland, it's early." "I know," I said. "But I think she left something behind, something you never filed." He didn't confirm it. Didn't deny it either. Just said, "Come by this afternoon." Alone. That word, alone, sat heavy in my chest. The day stretched slow after that. I paced the house, too restless for coffee, too wired for silence. The morning light poured through the bedroom window where Mama's old photo wall hung. I'd seen those frames my entire life, every crooked nail and faded edge. But one picture, the family portrait from the summer before my father died, had always hung just a little uneven. I reached up and lifted it from the wall. The backing felt thicker than the others. I pried at the edge, and the frame gave a small pop. Inside, tucked behind the photo, was a folded piece of paper and a small, tarnished silver key. My fingers froze midair. The note was written in Mama's slanted hand. "If you're reading this, it means I've failed to stop the rot. The real wool is where the lavender blooms." Her words hit harder than any accusation. She'd known something was wrong. She'd expected it. I sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the key resting in my palm. My throat tightened, not from grief this time, but from realization. She hadn't trusted anyone to protect her truth but me. By the time afternoon rolled around, I drove into town. Martin's office sat on the old courthouse square, next to a barber shop that hadn't changed its sign since the 70s. The door chimed when I walked in. He was waiting behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loose. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying someone else's secret too long. "You found the key," he said before I could even sit down. I nodded, setting it on his desk. "And the note." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "She made a second will 6 weeks before she passed. She didn't want Lorinda or your brother knowing. Said they'd fight it before it was signed." My pulse quickened. Was it legal? Completely. Signed, witnessed, notarized. "But she told me to hold it back unless you came to me directly." He opened a drawer, pulled out a small envelope marked with Mama's initials. The air between us felt like it was holding its breath. We drove to the bank together, the same one she'd used since before I was born. The silver key fit the safe deposit box like it had been waiting for me. Inside was a manila folder, sealed with red wax. I broke it open. The document inside bore her signature, dated, clean, decisive. It named me as the sole heir of her jewelry collection and personal estate. No loopholes. No shared custodianship. Just her handwriting and her trust. For a moment, everything around me, the hum of the bank lights, the smell of paper and metal, blurred. Vindication and grief mixed until I couldn't tell one from the other. Martin spoke quietly. She told me once she didn't trust the law to protect her legacy. Said she trusted her son to do that when the time came. I folded the will carefully, almost reverently, and placed it back in the envelope. Then that's exactly what I'll do. Outside, I sat in my truck for a long while, hands resting on the steering wheel. It wasn't just about Lorinda anymore. This was about clearing my mother's name, about proving she wasn't blind to the deceit around her. She just fought it in silence, the way I had. She didn't trust the law, I whispered to no one. But she trusted me. The thought steadied me. By the time I turned back onto the road toward home, the sun was sliding behind the hills. The envelope sat on the seat beside me, as if her spirit had buckled in for the ride. Half a mile from the house, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "Lorinda knows you have it. She's not done yet." I slowed the truck, headlights sweeping across the front porch. The door, the one I always locked, was standing half open. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, heart pounding steady but low. That door wasn't just open. It was an invitation I hadn't asked for. I scrolled through my phone while sitting in the truck behind Town Hall, heart thumping louder than the cicadas. Lorinda's TikTok had exploded. Dozens of shares, comments flooding in. In the video she stood in the parlor, wearing Mama's necklace, flashing that soft smile she always practiced. Below, people wrote, "She's honoring Aunt Zelma's legacy. Thank you for keeping her memory alive." I shut my eyes. A lie dressed up in praise. They didn't see theft. They saw devotion. That was the danger now, the public believing the lie. I unlocked the glove box and pulled out the folder, ledger snapshots, the second will, the photo evidence. I loaded my phone, drafted a post, part ledger, part explanation. I hesitated for a beat, then deleted it. Timing mattered. I'd speak at the event tonight, where the crowd would hear me face to face. Cleo's words echoed, "Let people hear your side before the rumor owns the narrative." She'd warned me this moment was coming, when silence would no longer protect truth. I printed about 15 copies of the will and evidence, enough for anyone who'd ask. By evening, the garden behind the hall was set up. String lights, folding chairs, floral arrangements, all meant to give Lorinda an aura of grace. Townsfolk in pastel dresses and collared shirts wandered in, murmurs drifting. The board was rolled out behind a podium. People gathered. They unveiled the donors board, Zelma Rami, founding donor, Rami Legacy Foundation. Lorinda stood below it, tears in her eyes, hands folded. She bowed when applause rippled. She said softly, "I'm fulfilling Mama's dreams." My heart pounded. That name in bronze, framed by her smile, it was appropriation. I made my way through the crowd, copies in hand, and asked politely, "Excuse me, may I speak?" The hush slapped the air. I cleared my throat. If she donated, why wasn't I asked? My voice carried over quiet disbelief. Lorinda's face flickered. She recovered. "Cortland, you're making this personal. This isn't your rehearsal." I raised the folder. "Her name is being used as currency. I have proof." She tightened. "Prove it." "In court." A few murmurs. Some anxious looks. Some nods. I held her gaze. "You want proof? Read the will. Read the ledger. See what she intended, not what you recycled." Someone in the back leaned forward, "But what about legality?" I nodded. "I'll let the law speak. But do not let this moment pass without people hearing truth." She swallowed, lips pressed. Crowds parted. I stayed rooted in place. When I stepped down from the podium, a man in a suit slipped me a folded note. I unfolded it while walking back. The ink was tight. "Your father's ledger is missing. He kept more than she knew." My vision narrowed. I stared at the words, heart sinking. So the legacy wasn't just hers, it was his too. That note from Chapter 7 haunted me in the early hours. "Your father's ledger is missing." I couldn't shake it. I paced the living room while the house slept, replaying his workshop schedules, his quiet evenings in the barn. He always said he had old things out there, things he tinkered with so no one would bother him. That toolbox. That barn. It made sense now, and terrified me. By the time I grabbed the flashlight, I was more sure than afraid. I slipped out quietly, footsteps soft across the porch, the moonlight guiding me. The barn door was unlocked, how my heart froze. Inside, dust drifted in the beam, tools cast long shadows. Every corner was memory, but I kept moving. I found the steel toolbox under the bench. Rusted hinge. The lid stuck, but I pried it open. Under chisels and screws lay a thick, cloth-wrapped ledger. I held my breath. Unwrapped it. The cover cracked as I opened it. My father's neat handwriting stared up, Zelma, estate, appraisal. Page after page, names, numbers, assets. Each entry carried weight. Then, L. Massey. 9 years ago. A note, collateral advance, heirloom pendant. The same pendant Lorinda wore. She wasn't an outsider, she was in the ledger. She'd been dealing with my father long before she claimed any rightful place. Betrayal layered in time. My father knew her. He recorded transactions. He kept records. Anger rose, but slow. Like a tide. Because it wasn't just her duplicity. It was his silence. He let it grow. He let us live believing in pieces, while the ledger held the whole. I closed the book after hours of pushing through pages. The last entries were recent, assets withheld, pending returns, agreement rescinded. My father had tried to stop it, or control it. But we were all tangled in it, past, present. I carried the ledger back, each step heavier. At home, I placed it beside Zelma's will. 2 truths laid bare. I fetched the fireproof safe and locked it in. Then I wrote a note to my attorney. This is beyond theft. This is our history. Hold it. Unseal it when the world is ready. I turned off the lamp. The house was silent, waiting. My phone buzzed. If you show that ledger, she'll destroy what's left of your family. I stared at those words, quiet and final. Turned off the phone. If war was coming, I'd wait at the door. Sunday came quiet. It always did, but this time it felt earned. I woke with the kind of stillness that doesn't demand anything. No dread. No expectations. Just still. I made coffee, black and strong, and sat at the kitchen table with my journal open, the pen lying across it like it had something left to say. I didn't write. I just sat there, staring through the window as the sunlight slid slow across the fence. I thought of Zelma, those mornings she'd shuffle in, robe half-tied, mumbling about letting grace do its work. Back then I thought she meant prayer. Now I understand she meant silence. Restraint. That there's a kind of strength in not swinging back. And letting the weight of the world fall off your shoulders without asking where it landed. The internet didn't give Grace much time. By mid-morning, I'd gotten a call from Edna down at the diner. Have you seen the blog? She asked, half whispering like it mattered on the phone. I hadn't. But I knew. Lorinda's name was out. The estate sales. The connections. Her signature on those ledgers. The whole thing unraveled in a neat little article with screenshots and timelines. They even linked her maiden name. It's spreading, Edna said. Church folks are talking. At church, I sat in the back. Same pew where I'd said goodbye to Zelma. The pastor didn't say her name, but he didn't have to. He spoke of truth, of legacy, of what gets passed down when we're not paying attention. And he said something I'll never forget. Sometimes it's not about justice, it's about what comes next. Lorinda didn't show. By dusk, she was gone. Car packed. House empty. Not a word to anyone, including my son. That evening he came over, jaw clenched, pacing the porch like it owed him answers. You're really not gonna press charges? I looked at him long. No. She stole from you. From us. She didn't steal anything I'm not better off without. He didn't get it. Maybe one day he will. Midweek, I called a family meeting. Rented out the old church hall, neutral ground. Some of them came out of obligation. Some from curiosity. But they came. I stood in front of them, hands in my pockets, not as a man who had answers, but one who finally understood the questions. I'm starting a foundation, I said. In your grandmother's name. Not for charity, but for stewardship. For truth. You could have heard a pin drop. Then, my granddaughter, quiet as a breath, always sitting back, watching, stood up. I want to help. It was all I needed to hear. The rest was just paperwork. The money from the jewelry, the house, redirected into a new account. I signed over every right I had to a lawyer I trust, someone with no family name to protect. No more secrets. No more leverage. Back home, the house didn't feel like a trap anymore. I walked into Zelma's sewing room, still smelled like her. Faint lavender. I opened the drawer where she kept her old Bible, fingers brushing worn pages. A note fell out. Forgive for your sake, not theirs. I sat there a while. Just breathing. Later, I pulled out the last note from that stranger, the one about what would happen if I exposed the ledger. I held it over the fireplace, watched it catch. It curled, smoked, vanished. For the first time in weeks, I turned on every light in the house. Not because I was scared. Because I wasn't. I stepped out into the garden. The roses needed water. The sun had dipped, but the sky still held a little light. I lifted the can, started at the far end, just like Zelma used to. Halfway through, headlights swept across the gravel. A car I didn't recognize eased into the driveway. No rush. Just presence. I set the watering can down and watched. Some endings knock. Others simply wait for you to open the door.